Hello and welcome to this video for Venus's transit through Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. Venus will make its entry into Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra on the 17th of February, just a couple of days after the solar eclipse on the 15th, and will continue its transit through until the end of the month on the 28th of February, at which point it will shift into Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra. We don't like to make mistakes. Mistakes feel humiliating to us, and we don't like to feel small. We don't like to feel marginalized. That's the word I'm looking for. We don't like to feel marginalized, and let's face it, as if we did something really stupid, right? So what do? Do we just not take a chance? Do we avoid following the things that inspire us? Do we avoid listening to the input of our heart and the direction that it wants to send us in? Do we ignore what we're feeling compelled to do and just stay in the doldrums in a situation that doesn't really feel like it serves us and as if it's something that we don't really want to deal with anymore? Do we do that? Well, certainly not. We don't do that either. So what to do? Because, on one level, you are kind of in a period of creating a shift. You're in between two different circumstances, and inspiration is beginning to build. Your passions are beginning to surface that are there to kind of shift you into a new path for yourself. But one part of you is afraid of just kind of getting it all wrong. And what to do if you get it all wrong? Do you retreat back to where you were once before? Or do you just continue moving onward, knowing that you might fall down again and that you might stumble and that you might scrape your knees and that you might have to get up and kind of dust yourself off and pick yourself up over and over again and deal with that frustration? And let's face it, who wants to deal with that? And that is one long, damned run-on sentence, isn't it? But that's kind of how it feels. Life is just like this one long run-on sentence where, sometimes it goes and goes and goes, and we have to deal with these circumstances until we reach that, what they call here in the UK, a full stop, what they call in the States, a period, the punctuation point at the end that allows us to stop and go, and at that point that we do that, that's the point that we look back and we go, what the hell was all of that about, right? And why did I have to go through all of that? And now that I'm looking at that sentence that I just created, is that a sentence I can deal with, right? Or do I feel like I'm being sentenced to something that I don't want to deal with, right? And then we have to make those next steps on the journey. And because that previous step may not have gone so well, we then begin to question our next step and go, you know what? I listened to my heart with that, and now I feel like a complete you-know-what. And, I'd rather not have to deal with that again. But let's face it, sometimes we do have to deal with that. Sometimes we make mistakes, right? Sometimes we're not seeing things clearly. And let's face it, right now, you're dealing with one pretty darn confusing circumstance that makes it very difficult for you to see things clearly, right? So, if you make a mistake, it's only par for the course, right? And in the end, if you were to go, I'm just going to ignore what my heart is telling me and just kind of walk the simple, more restricted path because I'm afraid of making a mistake. If you do that, you might look back and go, you know what? I had a chance. Even if that chance meant that I failed, I had a chance and I blew it, right? So really, on a certain level, you always have to follow that inspiration. That inspiration is a guiding force. It's a motivation. And if it ends up kind of making you fall down, slip, make mistakes over and over again, at least you stuck by yourself. At least you were true to what you felt in your heart. And that makes a whole lot of difference. Now, basically, this transit of Venus through Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, as it builds and builds towards the end of the month, so to speak, two planets will be influencing Venus by their aspect. And one is Mars, which is in Jyeshta Nakshatra. In Jyeshta Nakshatra, quite often we can get into this space of feeling that we're having to deal with a lot. And with Mars there, Mars is the fighter. And so when it's kind of dealing with the BS, for lack of a better way to put it, what it tends to do is it goes, you know what? I'm going to try to battle back against this BS in the best way that I can. And when Mars isn't really kind of functioning well, it'll make stupid mistakes. But Mars is pretty strong in the sky right now, and it's pretty supported. So it places you in that position where impulse, logic, all those Martian-oriented things are pretty strong and can guide you towards making some pretty positive steps in your life. But Mercury by transit is somewhat weak. And so that weakens your oversight of the situation. And Mercury, during the earlier part of this transit, will be in Shatabhishak Nakshatra before it too makes a shift into Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, at which point you might find yourself in a position where you begin to feel kind of frustrated at some of the decisions that you've made. But again, I want to come back to it. You can't always get it perfect. And mistakes sometimes are some of the best steps that we can possibly make if we learn from them. And learning from them doesn't mean that we don't necessarily do the same thing. Sometimes it means making a minor adjustment, making a minor shift so that we're being able to make a clear decision. And later on in the month, beginning of early of next month, both Mercury and Venus will be shifting into Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra. And yes, there may be some revelations at that point, and they may be eye-openers, and they may be things that, open your eyes in a way that are kind of like, wow, what was all of that about? And it makes you so you kind of go, well, gee, why did I do all of that? But again, it's not necessarily a mistake. You're torn right now. Things are confusing. It's hard to know which direction you should turn in, right? But with Venus transiting through Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, there's an elevating energy. And Venus helps us to make those decisions that allow us to live an enjoyable life. Venus is strong by transit. Mars is strong by transit. That says a lot for our passions in the positive sense of the word. Why do I say positive sense of the word? Because often when you say the word passion, people go, oh, well, I'm blinded by passion. I don't want that. But sometimes our passion is an impulse that if we follow it, sure, it may guide us in the direction where, we're kind of blindsided. But even if we're blindsided, at least we followed that impulse, which was guiding us from within here, and which was the urge, the creative urge, that's the phrase I want to use, that begins to propel us forward towards making steps that make us feel like we're making decisions for ourselves that is something that we would appreciate experiencing for the future. I know that's improper grammar. I don't really care. Okay. So, but it guides us towards making positive decisions for our life that make us feel like we're living an enjoyable life, rather than living this restricted life, not following the impulse of our heart, instead just going by what we feel to be the safe, secure, run-of-the-mill, status quo way of acting. And let's face it, to be part of the status quo is no fun. To be a trailblazer is something that, sure, you may kind of find yourself beset by the brush in the middle of the forest and trip over and come with a few thorns in your leg and things like that, and things that kind of make you go, ouch. But in the end, you're going to be the one who blazed your own course. You set your own trail. And when you reflect back on this moment, a couple of months down the line, you'll look back at it and you'll go, yeah, it might have been a mistake, but look at where it brought me now. And now I see clearly. And if I wouldn't have made that mistake, I wouldn't have been here right now. So learn from the moment. Don't be afraid to follow your heart. Don't be afraid to take the path that inspires you. If you fall down, brush yourself off. Get back up again. If you fall down again, brush yourself off. Get back up again. Once bitten doesn't always mean twice shy. Once bitten can mean the second time you're not going to get bit again, right? Okay. But you don't have to be shy to avoid getting bitten, right? What you can do is when you're about to get bit, you go, right? And you take care of that thing that's going to bite you, right? Or you just kind of go, you know what? It's just a bite. I'll put something on it and kind of deal with that and let myself move on, right? So mistakes are sometimes the best tools that we have. They're the best resources that we can come upon. Because when we make a mistake, we learn, right? We adjust. The key to this particular energy is that those adjustments that you make, they don't need to be restrictive. They need to be based upon what is true within here. Kind of lurking in the background of this transit, we've got Saturn going through Purva Ashadha Nakshatra, and that's kind of also bringing this torn energy to the surface. But what it's trying to teach you is to always be true to what feels right and authentic to you. And even if that path that you take that feels right and authentic to you kind of, lands you temporarily in some difficult situations, in the end, you'll look back on it and you'll go, you know what? At least I was true to myself. And then, so I know I'm kind of repeating some things, but it's important. Then you'll be following your own path. Then you'll be following your own dharma, so to speak. And that dharma is guided by what's in here, not just up here, not just up here. Sure, we have to use this, right? But we also have to use this. We have to use that impulse. We have to use that inspiration, right? When those two come together, the senses become heightened. And then we can begin to take steps that feel clearer, right? So the confusion that you're having is because you're torn in here. Confront that first. Confront that first. Listen to what's really rising to the surface within there. And let that be the guiding force behind your next steps. So if you'd like a little bit of help with the next part of your journey, I should mention that you can always feel free to schedule an astrological service with me through the astrological services page of my website. If you click on the link above in the video, it will take you to that page. That's going to do it for this video for Venus's transit through Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. Until next time, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.